It's all about you. It's all about you, baby. It's All About You, the podcast, is always about people that have been through a trauma and come out a greater version of themselves, or the people that have enabled them to do that and supported them through a tough time. Now, my interview this week is with Christine Bruce, and it brings home how life can change in a second. I'm sure many of you will relate to her story. This podcast is sponsored and supported by 365 days of breastcancer.com. And welcome, Christine Bruce, to It's All About You, the podcast. I nearly went into an Australian accent then. Christine Bruce. Anyway, welcome.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Yeah, great. It is great for you to be here, I agree. And I'm really keen, before you start to tell your story of what happened to you, if you wouldn't mind just chatting and taking us through who you were before the accident happened.
Okay, so I'm a mum of 3 boys who keep me very, very busy. I say 3 boys, they're pretty much grown up now, or they like to think so anyway. And also have a husband and a full-time job. So
it always makes me wince when people say they had 3 boys. Because I just know what the dynamic of that would be.
Yeah, it's full on.
Yeah.
It's full on, but no, it's
not so
good.
bad now. They're
it's
a bit
good.
bigger.
Yeah, no, it's good, and they're all lovely. So, but yeah, it is busy, and you know, life was a kind of one touchline or another, supporting football, hockey, etc. When I wasn't doing my full-time job as a marketing manager for a chain of estate agents. You know, just with a kind of day-to-day attitude. So it was like, what are we doing today? What are we doing tomorrow? And get through those days, and you know, making sure that everyone was in the right place, right time, with the right lunchbox, etc. You know, so yeah, just very busy, and family time was precious. It still is, but it just, you don't seem to find that time, I think, unless you look for it.
Yeah, you have to mark that time out. Yeah,
definitely.
I've certainly learnt that over the last few years.
Absolutely.
So, would you just take us through what actually happened on the day that your accident happened, and just let people know, you know, what occurred?
Yeah. So it was a Monday morning in October, bright sunny morning, and I love Mondays because they're always very busy days and, you know, a lot to get through, but that's kind of how I like my job to be. So I was on my way to work, driving, and not really thinking about anything in particular, not really kind of aware of anything that happened before the crash, but all of a sudden a car that was travelling in the opposite direction just swerved straight in front of me, and met me head on. And wow. I'm told by the police that it's the same effect as driving into a brick wall at 70 miles an hour.
Wow.
So yeah, quite traumatic, goosebumps. And I'm very grateful to particularly the driver who was behind me, he was some way behind me, but he stopped. And he reassured me, kept saying to me, you had absolutely no chance, because I keep going back through it, you know, in my brain and thinking, you know, could I have braked earlier? Could I have known what was going to happen, anticipated it somehow? But apparently not. It was literally, you know, driving along, suddenly black car, bang. And then everything went very white, which was the airbags going off. And aside from the loud bang and thinking to myself, just no, I don't know what I meant, but just no, it's not going to end here. No, it's
rejecting it, isn't it? No, I don't want this.
No, I don't want this. No, this can't be happening.
Yeah.
No, I don't want it to happen.
Yeah.
But and actually, no, I don't want to die, because in that split second, I did think I was going to die. I did think I was going to die.
Yeah.
And it still chills me just talking about it, but. Yeah, and I'm grateful to this man for saying you had no chance, because, you know, it stops me doubting myself and doubting whether I could have done something about it to prevent it from happening, really.
Which I always find that quite fascinating, that your brain does that to you. When a car's come straight in front of you and you're sat here doubting still, could you have done something about it?
Yeah, but I think I was probably thinking, had I just not been concentrating, did I miss a few seconds?
You were thinking, could you have stopped before you got to him?
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
But it was literally, I didn't even have time to brake. So,
No.
So yeah, it was same effect as driving into a brick wall at 70 miles an hour, which is...
Nobody wants to do that, right?
Yeah, I feel lucky that I could get out of the car and just walk away, stagger, whatever. A lot of pain, but, I'm thankful that we're in an age where we have seatbelts, we have airbags, and that's what they're there for.
Yeah.
And that they worked on that day, so, yeah.
You felt the benefit.
Definitely. And the other driver also walked out of that accident, so, thankfully there were no fatalities that day. And I was glad that I was on my own as well, that the boys weren't in the car with me, or that none of the boys were in the car with me, because I think that would have made things a lot worse. Psychologically, I think I'd have felt a lot worse from it.
Well, because actually, when something as enormous as that happens, and I love the fact you're shouting out no, I mean, I've taken to doing that myself this last 18 months, just like a demented woman in the car sometimes. But actually the benefit of that is you're getting all the shock out, and you started that process almost straight away, which is incredible.
Yeah, I mean, I think I probably didn't actually shout till I got out of the car and saw the other driver, but it was that I thought I shouted it in my head. That was what I was
you shouted at him, did you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wouldn't like to repeat what I shouted, I'm sure, but... No, I think it was like, what on earth were you doing? What on earth were you thinking? Why would you do that?
And he'd actually, just to put some context to this, he'd hit some traffic that he hadn't seen, that's right,
yeah,
isn't it?
he'd obviously looked away for a second, and that's all it takes. And that's, one of the things that I stress to people is that, so he would have been doing 30, 35 miles an hour, looked away for maybe, a second or two, whether he was retuning the radio or whatever.
Air conditioning,
anything like that.
You know it.
Maybe he was on his phone, maybe he was texting, I don't know. But in that split second, the traffic in front of him had stopped. So he was faced with a car right in front of him that had stopped, and so he just swerved straight in front of me in order to avoid it. And I think the man was Swedish, so he was used to driving on the other side of the road, so maybe his instinct was to pull that way to thinking he was driving off the road rather than driving right in front of me. But and just kind of met me head on.
Immediately after the crash, I mean, I can't just imagine the shock, and you're totally shaken up and all of that, the smell of the airbags, the noises, all of that. What happens from that point forward?
Well, I think, I was really lucky that people around me just took over, and so someone called the ambulance, somebody called the police, and just basically made sure that I actually went and kind of sat on, there's a barrier where it happened, and made me sit down so that I was, not going to faint or collapse or whatever. They recognised that I was in extreme shock at that point. And, there were people there who, they had their kids in the car, and they made sure I was okay, went away, took their kids to school, and came back to see if I was all right. And it's very heartwarming when that happens, that people actually care enough about that. And I'd love to be able to say thank you to the people who did that, but I didn't get any numbers or names or anything. So and then the ambulance arrived, and they checked me out, because
it's not just you that it shocks, is it? When no. Even if you think about things you've seen yourself that you're not involved in. I mean, just a small thing the other day, I saw a lady fall over, and there were about a good half dozen people around her, but it bothered me until I got to where I was going, thinking, oh gosh, I hope she's okay. So to see something as horrible as what happened to you, it affects everyone around you, literally.
Yeah. And also, since the accident, when I've seen other accidents, I know how badly that's affected me. So, there would have been, there would have been people who saw the crash that day who would have been very, badly affected by seeing it. And I do feel for the kids who would have seen that accident, because I think for them it's quite shocking. Although, perhaps kids are more resilient and, it's just like something out of a movie or something, so perhaps they would be able to compartmentalise it and forget it in that way. But no, I'm very, very grateful to the people who stopped, and grateful to all of the emergency services people who came and checked me over. I mean, they breathalyzed both drivers, and checked reflexes and things, I guess, looking for signs of drug abuse that might have caused the accident, from checking both parties, although it was obviously just nothing I could have done about the accident, and I don't think they found any signs of drug abuse in the other driver or alcohol, and obviously certainly didn't find anything from me. And yeah, I mean, I later heard that the police decided to prosecute, although at the time they advised me against calling for that, simply because of the amount of time it takes the police to process that kind of thing, and the court's time, etc. But they obviously discovered enough to warrant taking him to court.
So they took him to court.
Yeah. So, and I haven't found out what happened or what the outcome was. I haven't really made it my business to find out either. So.
Kind of doesn't matter in a way, does it?
No. I mean, I think, in all honesty, probably that day he was doing what any of us might do, which is to tune your radio, adjust the air conditioning or whatever.
Yeah.
So, I don't really think of it in responsibility terms, but it's the outcome and how you deal with things that matters. I think.
Which leads me nicely onto how you did recover from it, mentally in particular. It's one thing having cuts, bruises, breakages, fractures, you name it. But the mental aspect, I've come to understand really keenly this year, is what will drag you through any rubbish situation. But it's not always that easy to find, is it? You've got to really work hard for that. And in a situation like the one you've experienced, you sometimes find you've got to work a bit harder than you would have expected. You've got to really dig deep to get yourself back into a decent space or beyond that. So how did you find that afterwards? And now, in fact, it's not something you just forget, is it?
No. So I suppose I'm the kind of person who just expected to walk away from that and then carry on with my life as if nothing happened. That would be my kind of approach, is always just get on with it, really. And from the accident, my husband came to pick me up. The car was obviously a write-off. And the first thing I did was say to him, can we go via my office and pick up my laptop, because there's things I need to do. Wow. I've got ads to get off to press, etc. So we went, this was after the ambulance guys had obviously let me go and were happy for me to go. And there began 3 months where I was taking painkillers and didn't realise that I was actually, everything I did felt like I was wading through treacle. Because I was just in this kind of brain fog. We went on holiday a couple of weeks after the accident, and I think the physical side of things really hit me then when I got in the swimming pool and decided, found I couldn't actually swim because the pain of my ribs was so great. And I couldn't lie flat on a sun lounger. There were a lot of things I couldn't do, but at that point I was kind of thinking, but it's early days. So 3 months of painkillers, and I decided that was enough. But at that point, the physical pain really kicked in. And at that point I was able to start physiotherapy, and was spending an hour a day doing physio, and got to the end of the physio, and the company that were handling my compensation claim said you need to go for a psychiatric analysis. I'm not sure that's the right word for it, but that's what it was. So they sent me to see a psychiatrist who deals with trauma, and I went in there thinking I'm fine, but actually just fell apart on her. I think she was the first person that I had talked to about the accident.
Well, and you're on your own, in your own space.
Yeah, and where I didn't
confidence.
have to pretend. And
Absolutely.
I think up until then I'd pretended for my mum and dad, for my kids, for my husband, that I was okay, and I just wasn't. So
how long was that after the accident that you saw
that
her?
was almost 6 months.
Wow.
And I think I had been propped up on painkillers initially, and then focusing on the physio side of things with the physiotherapy, and I think also, I suppose just before that I had started to pick up paints, pens, drawing stuff, which was something that I was doing in order to replace the time that I might have gone out on walks and more active stuff, which I couldn't then do. So having seen the psychologist, she recommended that I have 14 1-hour assessments and ways to find an improvement, or ways to make me feel better. And she basically assessed me as displaying all the signs of post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. And it kind of felt good in some ways to have a label on it, so that you knew you weren't just quietly going mad.
No, I am fascinated you said that, because, as you know, I went through some pretty traumatic stuff in a very different way. And I did think I was going mad. I did.
Yeah.
You think your head's lost the plot somehow.
Yeah, absolutely. And you
and
can't,
maybe
you can't
it has a bit.
you can't
maybe.
make sense of it all.
No, you can't.
No. And it's
too much. It's too much for your brain. And actually, the fact that you took 6 months, in a way, to go to receive your psychological help, might have been a good thing in some ways, because it allows you to process some of the stuff that's happened.
Definitely.
For it to come out, because I too thought you deal with things and you're okay and that's the end of it. But actually, the more you move into it and you're looking back down the way, you think, my gosh, that was ridiculous. The whole thing was nuts. How did I go through all that and pull myself out the other side?
Well, I think certainly when I stopped taking painkillers, it was only when I stopped taking them that I realised that I had lacked any kind of clarity. And yet I'd been going into work every day. I didn't miss a day's work. The first 2 weeks after the accident, I worked from home, and then I had a week on holiday. But after that, I was straight back into the office. So, and I think, I dread to think of some of the things I must have written or perhaps done, but you just do it on autopilot.
Which
and
makes
you fog.
You just look around you, there'll be plenty of people going through similar traumas, and might not be an accident, could be divorce, grieving, whatever it is. And there's many of us out there that are struggling on a day-to-day basis, and you can't see that.
Yeah, well, I think that was one of the hardest things, certainly at work, was that people saw that I was back at work, and so they just assume you're better.
Yeah, that's what happens.
It's the non-visible injuries that people don't take account of, and obviously you don't know that people are going.
No.
You have no idea what someone else is going through, and I think that's certainly something that I've thought about a lot since the accident. Is that I was very lucky. I didn't have any very visible injuries anyway. But once the physical side of things was better, and I suppose when I was signed off by the physiotherapist was February, that was when February or March time was when I was officially physically better. But it's the mental side and the emotional side that and it's harder to heal that.
It is. It's the damage that's there.
I wouldn't say I'm totally better now.
No.
But and it's, I don't expect people to treat me any differently or anything, but there are definitely things that I do differently, that I think differently, or just approach differently because I'm in a different headspace. At that point, I took the decision that I wanted to get better, and I felt that I needed to just draw a line under the whole compensation case and move on. So I settled without having that counselling, and really, I suppose, researched PTSD and ways to approach it, and did a lot of self-help and a lot of soul searching, and I suppose I've partly, it was getting better of its own accord because time's a great healer. But I did a lot of things which were going, rather than avoiding the scene of the accident, is making sure that I go that way every day. I still wince as I do, but it's getting easier, and but also just making sure that I felt positive about the outcome of the accident, and really holding on to that positive. And so for me, as mentioned, my positive was, or my silver lining as I call it, was getting pens and paints and crayons out again, and rediscovering my creative side.
Lovely.
So and it brings me great pleasure, anyway, but it's something that's been really important for me, and it's something that I see very much as being a big part of my future, in retirement, when it happens, not for a few years.
And you've carried that on, which is lovely.
Yeah. So that for me has been my kind of saving grace, as it were, and just, really, I suppose, making sure that today is better than yesterday, that after the accident is better than before, and just being glad to be here, really. And really appreciating what goes on around you.
So I don't know whether you feel the same way, but certainly with the experience I've just gone through, I, in a weird way, I'm grateful for having gone through it and to be here, because it's given me a real vitality for my life. And a no-nonsense approach. I mean, I've kind of a bit no-nonsense before, but I just feel I want to live above the line more, and I'll look for that, and if anything's bringing me below that, I'll walk away from it. And I'm pleased I'm like that. It's just cut out the rubbish and allows me to make my choices quicker.
I think it's that kind of feel the fear but do it anyway.
Susan Jeffers.
It's something where I suppose if in that split second where I thought I'm going to die, and then being given a second chance, if you like, so it's that no, you're not, and you're going to make the most of what you've got. And I suppose I didn't for the first few months because, as I say, I was in this kind of brain fog, and perhaps now more than any other time, since the accident, it's becoming more of a sense of making the most of what you have, and really trying to enjoy that and enjoy whatever you can, whatever life throws at you, because it is going to throw, and I'm not saying this is the end of it by any means. I still feel uncomfortable talking about it, and I do kind of get the chills and all the rest of it. But like you, I suppose I'm not sure I'm grateful about that day, but I'm grateful to have the second chance and to look back and realise that actually I've come a long way since then, and there's a long way forward, hopefully, that you get that chance to really go for it.
Gives you a clarity. I think
definitely.
I said I felt that I'd been given a big pair of clarity goggles, and long may they remain.
Yes, indeed.
Well, Christine, thanks a million. I would like to see some of your creativity at some point. It's brilliant that you
Never
found
wish
that.
that.
But thanks so much for sharing something that's still raw for you and something that you're working really hard to keep in a good space for yourself. And that's not an easy thing to do. I've got, a mental thing that I'm constantly doing the work. You're constantly working on things, and when you've had a trauma thrown at you like that, you feel like it's never ending, but all of a sudden you'll look back down the way and think, oh, there we go, it's not quite as shocking as it was before. And hopefully you're left with the good bits that you found in yourself, which is fabulous.
Definitely.
So thanks a million.
Yeah, thank you.
And glad to have you here.
Yeah, glad to be here.
Yeah. There were just 3 points that I wanted to pick up on here from Christine's chat. The first one was, one of the hard things to listen to was how it was 6 months before Christine got any mental help. As you know, I'm passionate about your mental space, the caring of it, the protecting of it, and the nourishing of it. So if this is you right now going through a traumatic time, go and seek some help. It's always, always worth it. Secondly, it's amazing how when some people go through a traumatic experience, they can turn super creative afterwards. And my question to you is there anything you've been putting off doing that you could pick up right now instead of waiting? And finally, Christine and I were chatting after, and she mentioned she has 5 ways to get through all that she's just been through. The first one was she likes to find beauty in the things around you. I love this bit. And she says you smile when you do. So you find your beautiful thing, whatever that might do, and smile to yourself. I mean, that's just super gorgeous. 2, accept or even ask for help when you're feeling overwhelmed. That's one of my big topics I talk about a lot. And there really is no shame in that. And people always want to help. The third thing she chatted to me about was be kind to yourself. She says she finds time to reflect, recover and relax. Isn't that lovely? And a question I like to ask myself is, would I talk to my closest friends the way I talk to myself sometimes? Fourth thing she said was learn to say no, which is huge, especially for us mothers who seem to say yes a lot. Saying no doesn't mean people love you any less. It means you are honouring yourself. And finally, the 5th thing that we were chatting about was she likes to breathe, and that is one of my all-time best things to do. Take several deep breaths when you're going through troubled times. It's lovely to see it working in Christine's life too. That's brilliant. I wish Christine a continued and strong recovery, and let's go to it. If you like this podcast, like it, comment on it, or share it. Thank you.